there's no real huge reason why not everyone can go invest.
Yeah.
Everyone can, but everyone won't. Why won't they? And I think the reason is because it's extremely difficult and it requires an insane amount of focus and attention. If being a real estate investor and building generational wealth was easy, everybody would do it. Welcome to the On Purpose Investor Podcast with your host, Eric and Tiffany Vogel. We spent several hard years building a rental property portfolio so we could have more time with our family and live our ideal life. Finding your path can be difficult, so we're here to help guide you along the way with lessons, tips, and tricks to design and implement your dream life through real estate investing. Now sit back, turn up the volume, and get ready for this episode of the On Purpose Investor. Hey Pathfinders, and welcome back to the On Purpose Investor Podcast with your host Eric.
And Tiffany.
Had to get whoop, whoop with it because I'm pretty excited about today's episode. Talking about our first property. It was crazy. But today, so we're on episode 15, the early days. We're going to dive into some small yet large things that happened on an almost deal, and then some really big things that happened on our first intentional property.
Yeah, so last week we talked about education, and we wanted to talk about how education had an impact in our business, and start by talking about the first properties, because we chose not to pursue seminars and courses or masterminds or really anything outside of a couple books and podcasts.
We were under the impression that seminars were
gurus.
Yeah, people that will sell you this big idea and show you pictures of them with babes on a yacht and say, hey, it worked for me, it'll work for you, and then get a whole lot of nothing. And so we were quite skeptical to begin with, and we didn't go to anything.
And we wanted to invest every penny we could into the deal,
and
realize that's probably not the best approach. You find good teachers and you pay them for their knowledge.
Right.
But at the time, we had such a scarcity mindset in that $600 we couldn't part with because we needed it to put in a new shower or whatever.
Right.
We saved every penny, but we lost some money along the way. So we'll talk through some of that today on our podcast.
Yeah. Well, first of all, education is quite important, whether it's seminars, courses, college, whatnot. Little did I know growing up, or let me say, little did I know going to college to be a music teacher, that I would no longer ever use that education again in the future, but I guess the principles of studying and...
Well, you use it in the Army, in your National Guard work.
Well, that's true, but there is a value in education no matter what you're doing, and if you want really good education, you should spend money to get it. But be careful, because there are good teachers and bad teachers, so just make sure you're researching your good teachers and bad teachers.
Yeah.
And we listed quite a few teachers that we stand behind and advocate for. I think it was last week's episode. Those are teachers that we absolutely support and we go see often.
Yeah. So let's go back to June of 2017.
That was the month that we were on our second date, and you helped me move out of my house.
Yeah, it was Father's Day weekend.
Father's Day weekend.
It was actually Father's Day that we moved you out of your house.
Yeah.
And I met your dad on our second date.
It was good times.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tiffany helped me move out of my house that I couldn't sell because I was upside down, essentially. It was only worth what I had in it. And then you add closing costs and agent's fees and all that, and I didn't have the $15,000 to pay that out of pocket, so couldn't sell it.
And you wanted to move, so...
And I wanted to move, and the reason I moved is still up in the air. Don't know really why I moved, but all I know is that I moved in with my dad because we had this big vision that we were going to build these two homes on one lot, and in order to do that, I needed to sell this house, and we were going to live together and save some money and then go do it. I'm pretty sure that was what was going on. So I'm moving with my pops. We're just two, well, at that point, we're bachelors.
Yes.
We have both since married. But we moved into the house together to save money to buy this land one day.
Well, and you guys were great roommates together.
Yeah.
Because you took care of the house together. Y'all would alternate cooking meals. And
we worked on cars together. It was a good roommate situation.
Yeah.
So if you get along with your dad very well, go.
And you're both single.
Go bunk up.
Yeah.
It's not a bad place to be. But, yep, so I moved in with my pops, and I accidentally became a landlord and rented out my house. And Tiffany and I started getting more serious and started spending more time together. And she was asking questions about my house I'd moved out of. I was like, hey, how's that rental property? I was like, I don't know. Yeah, it's good. I don't hear nothing out of them. Well, did they pay you? Yeah, they've got an envelope in the garage with their rent, and he tells me he puts money in it, and I just need to go pick it up. She's like, "Oh my goodness, Eric, you should like have an automated system to where they can pay, and you just have money in your bank account, and then have a separate bank account so that that's where all the income goes. That's where you pay your mortgage. That's where you pay all the house stuff." It's like, sounds complicated. Do you want to take over? And so Tiffany went down a rabbit hole of bigger pockets, and fast forward 4 years, here we are today. But she went down that rabbit hole and discovered this could actually be something.
Right. Well, I think the big thing was approaching it as a business and not a hobby. And you approached it very much as a hobby.
It wasn't a hobby. It was a means to an end. I was going to rent it out for a year or two and then sell it. So I could buy this land with Dad.
You might as well have just had it vacant, because then you wouldn't have wear and tear on the house.
Yeah.
Because you weren't collecting rent. You did eventually, but...
I went to the garage and picked up a wad of cash one day.
Right, cash.
Yeah.
Things you don't do, guys. Don't take rent in cash.
Those were good days.
Again, like we went into it, neither of us had any education in real estate. We just took a lease from your buddy and who was an attorney, so it's not like just a random guy, but some of the things in the lease were questionable in a funny way, but
yeah, it's all good.
We had no education, so we started educating in the lower cost ways of free through Bigger Pockets and the podcast and
webinars.
Forums and the webinars. Brandon was hosting regular webinars back then. So
I remember being on a webinar one night when we first got started investing in education, and I asked a question on the webinar, and Brandon answered it within the webinar. I was like, "Oh my gosh, he saw my comment."
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, I think what it boiled down to is we had a lot of time and not a lot of money. So we were willing to invest in reading a lot of books, but we could have shortcutted it a little bit by going to a couple seminars.
Right. Fast forward a little bit, we're researching how to be landlords. We're researching how to buy properties, how to run deals, how to run numbers.
We were running deals every night. I was running it throughout the day. Most of our deals came from the MLS. So we found a bunch of deals. I would send them to Eric and he would give a yay or nay if he thought it was a good deal.
Right.
So in March of 18, so this is roughly 9 months after we rented out that first one, we got under contract on this property, and it was our deal that didn't happen. We spent, 9 months working on this property.
Well, it started with us going out to the property, checking it out, trying to put together a scope of work. Walking through the house, it being our first house. Looking back now, I'm like, well, they weren't crazy big issues. Looking back now, rebuild a subfloor in the bathroom, rebuild the bathroom, run some central AC, and it's a decent rental property. But while we were looking through it, it was, oh my gosh, how long are these cabinets? How much granite or how much countertop is that? And I was just looking at all the things in the wrong way because I didn't know. I hadn't bought that book, How to Estimate Rehab Costs by Jay Scott. I hadn't done that, so I didn't really know what to expect or how to calculate anything.
Yeah, let me talk about a little bit more on how we found it. So we did Zillow searches, thought it was a good deal. Off the pictures, we would estimate roughly the rehab costs. Then we would go look at the property. And I think at that point, we were still looking at the property before we'd put in an offer. Mm-hmm. Eric came up with a rough estimate on the rehab cost. We used the Bigger Pockets calculators. Ran those numbers, and the cash on cash return was something that we were comfortable with. Found an agent, not our current agent. We just found some random woman and got it under contract.
Right.
We spent more time investigating the house, and that's when we found that the bathroom was falling through. Mm-hmm. Now that's something that we would handle relative ease. It's not
right.
We've faced that plenty of times so far. So today, at that point, we had never seen anything like that. The scope, it just felt like it kept growing. The house was sitting empty. It was a family home that I think the family had passed away. There were probate issues. I don't know if you remember all of that, but
I remember we were getting close to the closing date. They said, well, we can't close. Right. Well, what's going on? And, just reminding you, this was our first property that we'd ever tried to buy as an investment property. And so we're like, what's going on with it? And they're like, well, it's in a family trust and
someone had passed away and they never probated the will.
Right.
The people who thought they owned the house didn't actually own it because it was still in the estate of the person who had passed.
And so they had to get all the siblings and next of kin together.
And they could not do AuthentiSign or DocuSign or any of that. They had to snail mail the form because the people were all in their 90s.
And they were all living in all different parts of the country. And so it was just this huge, looking back, was a big waste of time.
Yeah.
Honestly, sitting around waiting on these probate issues. But we were thinking in our minds, this is the deal.
Right.
We've got to make this happen, and we're going to wait. We're going to wait for as long as it needs to take.
Yeah. And we were planning to purchase it with private money from someone that we knew personally that was willing to take a chance on us, even though we were new and still figuring it out.
Mm-hmm.
They had confidence that we would pay them back regardless. So that's how we were planning to fund it. And then as far as the renovation goes, we were going to fund it through credit cards with 0% interest. Again, that's a risky strategy. Don't know if I would recommend it to everyone, but that's the strategy we took. And then we were also leveraging some loans on our retirement accounts to fund part of the renovation. The plan was to do a refi at the end of the process, pay off that lender, pay back our loans, and go do this again and again. But we got way down the process, and our lender called us and said, actually, let me take that back. We were not going to use private money. We were going to use a commercial loan.
That's right.
I forgot that. So
because we had a lender lined up.
Yeah, so we were going to fund the rehab, but we had a lender lined up.
Mm-hmm.
And he was doing some digging and found that it was zone commercial.
Yeah, when he found that it was zone commercial, he said, talk to your insurance company to see if they can insure replacement costs on a commercial. And after we talked to the county, the municipality, they said, well, if this thing is a total loss, you cannot rebuild back a single-family home because it is zone commercial. So you can't get a rebuild. Right. Or replacement costs on your insurance. You can't get a replacement policy. And so it was uninsurable.
Right.
And once we found that it was uninsurable, we're like, what? Are we just going to buy a commercial piece of land? And if it fails and falls to the ground or whatnot, do we just now have commercial property?
Well, and I think at that point we were so burned out on it. 3 months into this whole process, we wound up purchasing our next deal. So we were already rolling on that. And we were just continuing to try to make this purchase happen.
Mm-hmm.
So our focus had already shifted at that point. Now, if this happened to us, I would take that deal in a heartbeat, have it rent it out for however long, have it commercial, and then build self-storage or something out there. Let that zoning change work.
I wanted to build an RV park on it.
Yeah. We would come up with a strategy that worked. But at the time, our strategy was to do BRRRRs or flip to rents.
Mm-hmm.
For single family homes, and this whole commercial thing, all the probate issues, we're people of faith, and we believe that when things are really hard and just a struggle, that might be a sign that we're not supposed to do that deal. So we just kind of took it as, you know what, this has been an arduous process, and maybe it's time for us to move on.
And that's what we did. We chalked it up to a loss. We were out, a couple $1,000s?
Yeah, we wound up, I think we lost our earnest money, which we probably shouldn't have, but
yeah.
And I think we had paid for an appraisal.
We paid for an appraisal, we paid for an inspection, and we paid for...
Maybe we got our earnest money back.
And we paid for a survey as well.
Okay. So all in all, I think it was about $2,000 that we were out. And at that point in our career, had we invested that $2,000 in some education, we probably wouldn't have lost it on that deal.
We could have done a $1,000 seminar.
Right.
And had the education of, what happens in these situations.
Yeah.
And at that seminar, we would have had a network of people
exactly
to call upon and say, hey, I know we just met at so-and-so seminar, and I've got this deal. I want to run it by you. They probably would have the experience and knowledge, or know someone that has experience and knowledge that would have helped steer us in a different direction.
Or just someone to take over and just pay us what we had lost and move on. But
yeah, we could have assigned that contract
right.
and made some money.
All in all, it was a good lesson learned. We paid for a seminar, if you will, of the School of Hard Knocks. Learned a lot, built a great relationship with that lender, and we just, like I said, 3 months into that process, we found another property and just decided, this one, it's just not working, and we're not going to force it. So let's just call it, move on, and be done.
Right. So in June of 2018, about a year after I rented out my first property. So we're a year after I rented out my primary residence.
Right. A year into us knowing each other.
Yeah. So we're 1 year of knowing each other. We're not even engaged yet. We're just boyfriend, girlfriend. And we hang out a lot. We talk about real estate a lot. And we put a house under contract.
Yes.
I'm going to do an overview of what this house is.
Yeah. Let me just caveat real quick. If you're going to invest with somebody that you're not married to, have a partnership agreement. Yep. Even if you're dating, just protect you and that partner, have an out, because if we had broken up, it would have...
It worked out for us, but it may not work out for everyone.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be tied up with rental properties and debt with someone without an exit strategy, because it could probably get pretty nasty, depending on people's personalities and, you know, how complicated the setup is.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'll tell you about this property. It was a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, brick. It wasn't ranch. It was just a brick house.
60s.
1960s brick house, 2-bedroom, 1-bath on 2 acres of land. On the back part of the property, probably 150 feet away from the main house, was a detached garage. It had 2 little garage doors underneath, and there was a rickety old metal staircase that went up to the top of this detached garage. And up there was a small little kitchenette, a little living room, and 2 bedrooms, and a small bathroom. And so immediately we're like, wow, this is an extra rental within this rental. And I remember I had a motorcycle back then, and I rode my motorcycle out to this house and met the real estate agent who is now our agent. He's our guy. He often tells the story. Yeah, I remember when you rode up that first day on your motorcycle looking all suave. I was like, yeah, I don't know. But we go around and look at it, and, you know, he was new to being an agent at the time, and we were new to buying investment properties, and showed us around. Before I left, I told him, we're going to buy this property, that we're going to make an offer on it. It's like, well, what do you want to offer? I said, we're going to offer this. Yeah. And told him what we're going to offer. So tell him a little bit about how we found this house.
Yeah, real quick before we go into that, I want to just say, while we were pursuing that deal that didn't happen, we were still making progress and analyzing deals. We didn't put all of our eggs in that basket. And this agent that we met, we're going to talk more about that, how we met him on episode 17. Mm-hmm. So stay tuned. But we were making offers like crazy still.
And he was sticking with us.
Yeah.
And showing us property after property and trying to build up his network.
Yeah.
And he stood behind us and submitted offers upon offers.
Yeah. Well, and I guess quick, funny little anecdote. While we were at the property that we'll talk about on episode 17, we get a phone call from the neighbors of Eric's house, that first property. And they're like, our house is burning to the ground and your house looks like it might be on fire too.
Yep.
So we had to leave the meeting, and our agent was joking with us later, like, yeah, I thought that was the worst excuse to leave a showing. And literally, like, his house burnt to the ground. We had some siding damage. It wasn't a big deal, but he thought we were just trying to get out of it. But
no, we still stick with him.
Yes.
He's our guy.
Yeah. So how we found it.
Yeah, how did we find this property?
I listened to a ton of podcasts and webinars and different things out there and education, and I created some Zillow saved searches. One of the things that Brandon really advocated on the podcast back then was 2-bedroom houses that are over 1,000 square feet, because typically you can add a bedroom and or a bathroom to that house. So that was in my saved searches. And I also had apartment, like keyword searches for the description.
Carriage house, apartment,
yes.
ADU. ADU means additional dwelling unit.
Yeah, in-law suites, like any of that kind of terminology. And this popped up in my email one day. I threw the numbers into the calculator off of what I thought it could produce, sent it to Eric, and he was like, I'm going after school, after work that day.
I rode out there immediately after work that day.
And
Brian, our agent, was like, when do you want to go see it? And I was like, in 4 hours. He said, I'll be there.
Yes.
So thank you, Brian, for always sticking with us and helping us out.
So I guess just all of that to say, I had really clear criteria on what I thought would be a good deal. Mm-hmm. And this property has turned out to be a home run for us. I'll let Eric talk about the renovations, and I'll talk about how we funded it, but we have nothing invested in this property today.
We'll get there.
Okay,
Let's talk about the renovations.
Sorry.
So we buy the property. By the way, Tiffany never saw this property in person until after we had bought it.
Yeah. So we're dating. I have keys to a house I've never seen, but I own it.
Right.
This was the second house I've ever purchased, so...
Right.
I didn't know what we were doing.
Well, I don't think I did either.
Yeah.
So we close on the house. I go down there and we start figuring out what we're going to do with it. So the 2-bedroom, 1-bath brick house, part of it, there was an office that didn't have a closet but could be used as a bedroom. So automatically we're like, wow, it's a 3-bedroom, because you could put an armoire in there and it would be a bedroom because it had windows to the exterior. It was a bedroom. And there was a gigantic laundry room in the back of the house. It was probably 14 by 14, this laundry room was. And I immediately thought, there's no reason this can't be a bathroom and a laundry room. I didn't know how to do anything at that point. I didn't know how to frame walls. I didn't know how to run electrical. I definitely didn't know how to run plumbing. I didn't know how to do drywall. I didn't know how to do anything. But the school of YouTube taught me a lot. And I spent the better part of a summer going through and building these walls and putting the electrical in and running the plumbing and doing it, Wild West style, learning how to do things.
You spent a lot of time in the attic, in the crawl space.
Yeah.
You know that house well.
I know that house very well, better than I think I probably should. I learned how to do all of this through YouTube and reading the Georgia code book from the year 2018 and knowing how much drop does this pipe need to have if it's a 4-inch and it's traveling more than 10 feet. I knew all of those things. I didn't know it before, but I was dedicated that I would figure this out. And I added that bathroom, and Tiffany helped me drywall it. And we painted it, and we had a full bathroom added, as well as a modern laundry room.
Yeah.
Because we put a wall straight down the middle of the room. I put the bathroom on one side and the laundry room on the other side. It was a great addition. So now we could market this house as a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. And it still had a massive living room and a big dining room. It was a very nice property by the end of it. And so moving on to the detached garage, that's actually the project I started first. Because I was like, it's smaller. I'm not adding anything. All I need to do is rebuild the floor and update it a little bit.
And the thought was we could get it rented out quicker
Mm-hmm.
and start paying our mortgage note with the rent from that property.
Right. It was, so we closed on it in June. When did we get that property rented out?
So the apartment was rented in July. So Eric was out for summer break from teaching. So he was out there all day. He had some of the students come out and help him, and he'd pay them to work. Had some other band director friends. It was a musical home of
yes, it was.
Band directors and students.
I had helpers come in and help me, hold joists while I nailed it in, or help me paint, or help me blow insulation in the attic. We had all kinds of help out there.
Yeah, you took the air mattress.
Yep.
And you had some PB&J and some Pop-Tarts and probably some beer.
There was actually no beer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I had gallons of water and a lot of Gatorade.
All right.
Because there was no AC in the apartment
at
that time, and it was just hot, and it was the middle of Georgia summer. I figured it out. I replaced windows. I ran electrical in that little apartment and ran some plumbing. I didn't build a bathroom or anything.
It was mostly cosmetic in there.
Yep. And so I rebuilt the porch.
Rebuilding the kitchen floor.
And the kitchen floor, right. So got that property all set up, and we got it rented out in
a month.
In July.
That's crazy.
And, thinking back,
how did we do that?
How did that happen?
Because even with a contractor, turning around a unit in a month is aggressive.
It was a lot of sweat equity. So, and then once that's rented out, I moved over to the house and started working on it. And when did we get the house rented out?
So that was end of September.
Right. And you got to think, I'm a teacher and I'm in the Army, National Guard. So at the end of June, early July, I'm at annual training with the military. So there's two full weeks right there that I'm gone and not able to work on stuff. But I did. So I would go do annual training up in North Atlanta. And then at the end of my duty day, I would drive back down to LaGrange and work on the property and fix that house a little bit. So that was about an hour and 30-minute drive to get from my duty station down to the project house. In the fall, when I finished with the apartment and got that done and rented out, I would go teach band, and it was marching band season, so we had practice almost every day after school, and we'd finish about 7, 8 o'clock in the evening. I'd go straight to that project house and then start running plumbing and electrical and painting and drywalling, and Tiffany would meet me down there
with dinner
while I got there with dinner, and we'd scrap down some food in the kitchen, eating on paper towels, and get to work.
Yeah.
It was an insane amount of just, we didn't do anything else. There was so much sacrifice that went into it. We didn't go hang out with friends. We didn't go to family functions. Every Saturday we were there.
Yeah.
That we didn't have something band related. Every Sunday we were there.
I remember being on a stepladder, doing spackling over that tub, and listening to podcasts, learning. It was just non-stop, pedal to the metal.
It was.
But we had big goals. We were confident in our relationship, even though it had only been a year. So we knew we wanted time freedom when our kids were born. Yeah, it was early on. We were serious, but we weren't engaged. So
Right.
I guess to have that big vision and roadmap is what made it worth it. Because that sucked.
Yeah,
Just
there
frankly.
was an insane amount of suck to it.
Yeah.
But, fast forward a little bit, we refied out.
Yeah, let me talk about the initial funding. And
Okay,
we'll talk
so
about
how did we
where we are today.
talk the numbers?
So we had someone fund the majority of the purchase, just a private money lender, and I believe we made interest-only payments through the course of the loan. We fronted the renovation, and it was a hefty renovation because we were renovating 2 properties.
Mm-hmm.
So we used, like I said before, credit cards with 0% interest, and our retirement accounts, took loans on those. And we made it work. So at the end of that process, we did a refi on a 30-year fixed loan, got a decent appraisal because remember, we added a bedroom and a bathroom to the house. We didn't do a lot cosmetically in the home itself because it was in good shape. So I guess we could have gotten a higher appraisal if we had done a little bit more work in the house, but I think we were just so ready to move on and do the next deal.
Right.
So we did the refi. We pulled out the majority of our cash. It wasn't all of it, but it was...
We left a couple grand in it.
I think it was more than a couple grand. I don't have the numbers handy anymore because we've done another refi since then. But all in all, we did okay on it. So we left some money in the deal, which meant we had some outstanding loans on our 401ks.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, when we talk about the next house, that helped our financial situation. But we had rented it out for a couple years.
How much were we making cash flow for that property?
Like $500 or $600 a month.
Cash flow on that property?
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, that was really good.
So we shifted.
And that's because it was 2 properties.
Right.
And then we shifted.
We shifted our strategy and we now rent it by the room. We did another appraisal and refi, just recently closed it. So now we've pulled all of our cash and then some. So we have a hefty negative investment, if you will.
Yeah.
We're producing income on that property with an infinite cash on cash return because we have none of our own money invested in it.
Right.
And our plan over time is to continue that approach and take as much equity out as we can.
Yeah.
So that we don't have a ton of our own money invested and we'll just continue producing that cash flow.
Right. And how much are we cash flowing on that property now? Is it somewhere in the $1,500 to $2,500 range?
Yeah, in that range.
Getting creative on how we rent it out is a way that we've been able to, strategize and get a little more comfortable in our financial independence life by just diversifying how we're renting our properties out.
Yeah.
Not all of our properties do we do by the room. We have 4 properties that we rent by the room, and they're doing pretty well.
Yeah.
And they definitely supplement the cash flow for our business very well.
And they rent very fast. We're able to fill the vacancies quickly. So it's a strategy we like for now.
But it is higher touch.
Yes.
It requires a lot more attention because you have a lot more people, a lot more individual people in the home. You might have a family of 5 living in the home, but only, there's only one source of income or the family is paying.
Right. Well,
but
and
now you have 5 individual people paying, each one paying. And so there's 5 different types of people living in that house. And so, you deal with the different things about people living together and, so-and-so cleaned the microwave and so-and-so didn't clean the microwave. But that's something that
for
it
us,
comes with the higher rate.
Yeah, it's a strategy that provides the cash flow for a little bit more work, but we're willing to do it. And it's not our strategy forever. It's a strategy we're running with for now. And as we continue to grow our portfolio, we will probably shift to more lower touch situations with just traditional rentals or property management or, different avenues to decrease our time involved.
Right.
But for where we're at now, it's probably one of the better houses that we have because it's 2 units. It was relatively low cost, especially with the way the market's gone in the last couple of years because we bought it 4 years ago. So
we paid roughly $90,000 4 years ago. And its value is somewhere close to $200 now.
Yeah.
We don't have any cash invested in that home.
Right.
But you can still do that in today's market. You got to get creative.
Find the strategy that works today. This is
right.
the strategy that worked for us 4 years ago, but we would approach it a little bit differently now. But I think renting in unique ways, like renting by the room or doing Airbnb.
Right.
Things like that, I think are great while you're building and you don't have as much rent growth to help cover that mortgage, but over time as the rents on a traditional 12-year rental go up, you'll be cash flowing a lot more. And for me, like that's our strategy. Like, let's get as much cash flow now while we're getting some loan pay down, and we'll let the rent gross grow. And then over time, we'll turn it over to a traditional 12-year lease with a property manager. And
Right, 12-year or 12 month?
12 month. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
yeah.
1 year.
Yeah. That's a long lease.
That would be a long
sounds
lease.
commercial.
Yes. No, talking traditional 1 year lease.
12 month, 1 year.
Yes,
Got
yes.
it. Okay, just wanted to clarify there.
Yeah, thank you.
Is a pregnancy brain getting to you
Maybe.
a little bit?
The struggle.
I'm not trying to be chauvinistic by saying that.
No,
I'm
it's
just
a real
trying
thing.
to give you some grace.
All in all, to say, find the strategy that works for what you want and what you need and what you have. Because we had the ability to invest a lot of time. We didn't have kids. We were, a young couple that had just met. We had a good enough income that if this all flopped, we could make it up. It would hurt, but
Right.
our monthly income was so much higher than our expenses that we would make it work. So I guess we were willing to take a big risk because we had an out, but find what works for you.
And even with kids and family or different season in your life, if you have something big enough that you're willing to chase, and the reason you're doing it is big enough to keep you motivated through all of the difficult times, you will find a way to make it work.
Yeah.
You will find a way to make it happen. And maybe your kids are, 5 to 15 years old, somewhere in there. Get them involved. Get them at the house. Kids love destroying things. They love to be a part of the demolition process.
Mm-hmm.
Show them different trades. Show them how to paint. Show them how to spackle. There's no real huge reason why not everyone can go invest.
Yeah.
Everyone can, but everyone won't. Why won't they? And I think the reason is because it's extremely difficult, and it requires an insane amount of focus and attention. Being a real estate investor and building generational wealth was easy. Everybody would do it.
Yeah. You have to have that big enough why and the reason for doing it, because there were so many days that it's like, why on earth am I out here at 11 o'clock at night high on latex paint?
Well, high on oil-based.
Oil-based.
Kills.
Because we didn't know. Or,
Yeah.
why am I giggling listening to Bigger Pockets? Because I'm high on paint.
Yeah.
It's
On
just,
accident, by the way. Tiffany's
I
not
was
into huffing.
Just trying to get the job done. But, there were so many days of, why are we doing this? Like, bone tired. And then you have to get up at 5 the next morning and do it all again.
Well, and then we had that realization. We're like standing in this bathroom that we're painting, and I look at her and I say, all of this for $300 a month? And we just kind of look at each other like, that's not a lot.
Yeah.
And then we had to just remind ourselves, but we're going to do this 10 to 20 times.
Right. And it
How
snowballs.
does $3,000 to $6,000 a month sound?
Right.
Like, well, I guess that when you put it that way, it's worth it.
Yeah. And we, over time, did less and less of the work ourselves because we couldn't continue to go at this pace. But the learning process in that season was worth every penny.
Yeah, for us and our journey and the way our roadmap turned out, I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah.
I'm glad that we went through all of this and went through it together.
Yeah.
Because our relationship grew in ways that I don't think it would ever have grown.
Right.
Our investing career grew in ways that I don't think it otherwise would have.
Yeah.
We bought properties that I think other investors wouldn't have because we could see hidden treasures within.
Right.
Because I know what they look like from under and on top of and within and throughout. It really opened our eyes to, those diamond in the rough settings.
And that was your skill set. So if your skill set is communicating with people and finding deals, then that's where you should focus your energy and just get really good deals and then pay someone to do the work. We're not trying to advocate do what we did because that might not work for you.
I think the overarching goal of this episode is to say that it's going to get hard, and I think you should expect it to be very difficult at times, but it's so worth it.
Yeah.
Stick to it. If it's
Definitely.
hard, push a little harder. Push harder against it.
Yeah.
Because it's going to work out.
Definitely.
And there's going to be a light at the end of that tunnel. Whether it's a year from now or 10 years from now, you're doing a good work. You really are. And just keep at it.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that's wrapping
Keep
it up
going.
there.
All right. Well, thanks y'all for hanging out with us and listening to us talk about our first few properties and the lessons we learned. What lessons can you take from our experience and apply it to your life? Don't let the time you just invested go to waste. You only get one life, so live it purposely. That's all we have for you today. See you next time.
Are you ready to discover and build your dream life? Then it's time to become a Pathfinder. Head over to onpurposeinvestor.com and sign up for our newsletter to get tips and tricks to help you find your path and get the latest from our blog. If you haven't already, we'd really appreciate an honest review on your favorite podcast app. If you're enjoying this show, share it with friends, family, and fellow investors. See you next time at the On Purpose Investor Podcast.